Hello and welcome to This Week in Bitcoin with a little bit of a different background. I'm on the go for Relai here in Switzerland. Nevertheless, we still have some fantastic and interesting news. So let's get stuck in right away. News number one, technically not Bitcoin news, but I can make an arc and I can explain why it has a relationship to Bitcoin. And that is for all German viewers. You now know that you had your Bundeskanzler election where you essentially select a new government. And it's been an interesting time because the frontrunner, Friedrich Merz, he is now trying to form a government. And as part of that coalition plans, he has to speak to different parties and now came up with a economic idea that I could just call that because the old Bundestag, which was technically replaced due to the election, but because they had to establish some important laws, now again they used the old one, has agreed to a what they call in German Sondervermögen, which is essentially super exclusive debt if you translate it to proper English. And that means that Germany, who for the past 60 years has been very steadily in accumulating public debt, and they are one of the record holders in Europe, if not the number one, when it comes to how much revenue the country produces through to taxing. That all didn't add up because the country at the end of the day now has over 2 billion euros in debt, 2.2 to 2.5, depending a bit on what the time measurements are. Now, the Bundestag has decided that they will actually do this Sondervermögen, or this super exclusive debt, as I will call it, and they will add 1.5 to potentially even 1.7 billion. Meaning, whatever they did in the last 60 years gets thrown out of the window completely, and they're now adding more debt. And that debt, just as so it happens, is the same size as the entire market capitalization of Bitcoin. Incredible to see. Whether that will have an impact on assets such as Bitcoin, whether part of that money gets into the citizens, that's very unlikely, and it's more likely going to lead to inflation, a lot of spending, a lot of issues again, and then in 2 years people will sit here and stand together and say how could this happen? But yeah, seems like Germany is just making debt. And looking back now, consider what would happen if they would have held their Bitcoin and not make debt. Who knows? News number two are a study by NYDIG with Bitcoin's volatility since election compared to its overall run in the bull market. Very complicated, but simply explained, if you use these parameters and you actually look at the stuff, you would see that Bitcoin is down 23-24% from its all-time high on inauguration day, 20th January this year, at roughly 109,000 US dollars. And if you go back since election night, we did see some fluctuations and we're still a little bit up compared to when Donald Trump was elected in November last year. However, if you now take this lifespan in the bull market and you apply some, math, then you actually get to the data that's being presented in this report. And that is where you will see that Bitcoin beats volatility in markets. Volatility can also be measured, and that can often also be traded in TradFi. And it also beats commodities such as gold, silver, and even treasury bonds. Does this now mean that Bitcoin is back and it's a super performer? I'm very highly doubting it. I mean, we're still in a correction phase compared to where we were with the all-time high, but it's cool to see that even under these circumstances, Bitcoin is one of the best performing assets. And then last but not least, also some fun fact, the Bitcoin Nostradamus trader has actually set the right fig again. Over 129 days ago, Josh Mann predicted the right Bitcoin price with the right date. That gets a lot of fuss and a lot of tweets going and a lot of engagement on social media. However, I have to say there, these things can just happen. I can say it's going to rain tomorrow. I cannot say it's going to rain tomorrow over here in Switzerland and Zurich, but I can just say it rains, and somewhere in the world it will actually rain. So I'm right in that regard, but it's an easy prediction, if you know what I mean. So it's good to see that he does that. I'm sure he will have other calls where he'll be right. I'm sure he will have other calls where he'll be wrong. But the best thing probably to do is to not focus on these calls and signals and these kind of things. Study Bitcoin's fundamentals, understand them, and go from there. And with that, we're at the end of this week in Bitcoin. I hope you had a good time. If you like what you've seen, or if you have comments, let me know with a comment below. And I look forward to seeing you next week again. Bye.